have one of the greatest USMNT goalkeepers in studio. You bring him in to analyze the goalkeeping camp now. Here it is, Matt Turner, Zack Steffen, Ethan Horvath, Patrick Schulte, caps on the right, clubs down the middle. I don't know if these guys are playing too much, so that's why it's time to talk about them. Tony Meola, what an honor it is to talk USMNT goalkeepers with you.
My pleasure, my friend.
Those are the guys that we saw in camp, but do you kind of want to order them how you see it in your mind, the depth chart that Pochettino might be thinking about?
Yeah, Nico, I think what we can base a little bit on the last camp, right, which Patrick Schulte played in those two matches. So I'm guessing that he comes into this as the #1 goalkeeper. I look at Matt Turner, his experience at the World Cup. He comes in as #2. Zack Steffen, who I think is in form right now. We haven't seen him with the U.S. men's national team for a little while, so we'll have a look at what he looks like. I put Gaga Slonina as 3. We had this discussion a little bit earlier. Not in camp. Zack Steffen here in the total depth chart, not just the camp depth chart, moves to 4th, and Ethan Horvath, who has now been relegated to the bench and is not playing at all and has had a couple of howlers this season. I put him at #5 right now.
So Gaga Slonina being on the list, I think, it's what's going to make everybody's ears perk up, because he's a guy playing in 3rd Division England. Mind you, Barnsley plays through the international break. He would miss games if he were to be called here. How come you're such a big Gaga fan that you really do think, like, if this was a World Cup cutoff list, he'd be going to the World Cup today?
Yeah, no doubt. And I still think that this is the future of goalkeeping. And I've seen this guy come through the Chicago system. I was calling games. I was amazed at 17 at the things that he did. Way above his years in the way he looked at the game, the way he trained, the way that he went about his daily business as a professional player. And I see that continuing. We had him on the Call It What You Want podcast, and I asked him, where do you see yourself in June of 2026? He said, as the starting goalkeeper for the U.S. men's national team at the World Cup, right? I love his attitude. I love what he brings to the table. So I still think he's moving up. For me personally, I think he's the future. And look, someone took a chance on me at 21 years old with no World Cup experience and 4 World Cup qualifiers under my belt to put me in a World Cup. And I don't think, based on what we have, it would be a terrible move. Now, again, this is my list, and people will argue about it and all of that stuff, but I just think he is the future, and why not start as soon as possible with him? Zack Steffen's had a great season so far, and we'll break this group down one by one, but I look at him, and it's just been recent that he's come back into form. So I need to see a little bit more of that.
All right, so let's break down the goalkeepers in camp, starting with Patrick Schulte. What do you think that he needs to improve on, and what do you think is a factor that might be keeping him back?
Well, I said at the Nations League, if you remember, when we did the goalkeepers, Patrick Schulte was the guy I told you back then to look out for. I said that before the game, and he has kind of risen. He's played under Wilfried Nancy, where they've played a lot of important games at the international level, club level be it, right, but international games. So he continues to rise. So the things that recent success I like. The no international experience, hasn't played with our youth teams. He's got 2 caps. That's the part of it that I'm a little bit sort of shaky on right now. But that also comes with playing more games and getting more experience, and now probably going into camp as the #1 guy under a new manager. So you never know what first impressions do for a manager. So this is where I put him at the moment.
Do you see the potential in him to grow to be that type of goalkeeper that can have World Cup performances that are memorable, to sit at the same table down the line, at the same table where Tony Meola is sitting, where Tim Howard's sitting, where Casey Keller's sitting, etc.?
That's a tough one. I don't know that I see the top level, right, for Patrick Schulte. Keep in mind that Schulte was courted by a bunch of European teams this summer, right? And we don't know what his progress is going to be and what his pathway is going to be. But I think that if he has aspirations of being in 2026, Columbus is a great place to be. But if he can go get some European experience before that, I think he has a much better chance, obviously, to make that 2016.
All right, talk to me about Matt Turner.
The biggest advantage Matt Turner has right now, he's a shot stopper, a pure shot stopper. I think of all of them, he and Gaga are the two guys. If you put balls at the top of the 18 and you're just shooting balls, these two guys are the two that shine the most. He has World Cup experience. That's something that nobody can take away from Matt Turner, right? And that's something that's really, really valuable. Where the room to improve, there's a lack of sharpness right now. We saw it in the summer. I don't know how that gets better when you're constantly sitting on the bench and not playing games. I just, as someone who went through it for 20 years, and even in those moments where the coach gave you a week off, when I came back, I always felt like I was so far behind the pace. And maybe that was just me, but I'm thinking now, if I had, I don't know, nine match weeks where I don't play and I sit on the bench, how you can be sharp. So that's the challenge, really, for Matt Turner right now.
Tone, I was going to save this question for later after we went through all the goalkeepers, but I think it's pertinent to Matt Turner because we've seen him make a lot of mistakes with his feet. And Berhalter was a big guy on playing out of the back. But when you don't have players to do so, and I don't think we have excellent goalkeepers with their feet, how much do you think he might adjust or not to that facet of the game?
This is on Pochettino for the national team right now. We don't have a goalkeeper in that five that is exceptional with their feet. Truth be told, because of the way that they play, Patrick Schulte is probably the best guy with his feet. They play that way at Columbus. He does it week in and week out. He looks fairly comfortable. We know this is an issue for Matt Turner. So what does Pochettino do with the national team to simplify it as much as possible? I feel like Matt Turner sometimes has complicated that part of the game. I look at it, it was a strength of my game, but if I weren't good at it, the ball would be like a hot potato. Closest guy, you got it, man. You take it from here and you get on to the next station, wherever that is with the pass. So it's a problem for our national team.
I can remember specific moments from every single player that they've made pinpoint mistakes in big games with their feet. Schulte made up for it in CONCACAF Champions League against Tigres, but he was shaky with his feet. We've seen Matt Turner not be great, and Zack Steffen with Manchester City.
Was it
an FA Cup? Right.
When he lost the ball, it came, right? And the guy stole it off his feet.
And I know that you're going to make mistakes if you're playing out of the back. Ederson makes mistakes. Alisson makes mistakes. But they're reduced to so small. All right, speaking of Steffen, talk to me about this guy that has got living in a resurgence moment in his career.
Yeah, you use it. It's a resurgence right now, right? And what I put for Zach is that it's current success. We saw him with youth national teams. We saw him come up through the national team system, and he was the guy. I mean, we thought he didn't make the World Cup team.
Right.
We thought 2 years before the World Cup that this was a shoo-in, right? So I'm happy. He's in good form right now. What I don't want to get caught up in, part of the success, and the majority of it has been penalty kick shootouts during the Leagues Cup. Right? Penalty kicks is a very specific thing in goalkeeping, right? So I don't want to get caught up in that recency bias of those moments. But I watch his games and I see every part of it improving, including the leadership part, which I think he lost a little bit when you're not playing well. It's hard to be the communicator. And then you go to Man City and you're really not the guy, right? You're just the guy that's kind of trying to survive a little bit with the rest of the big boys. That part is good. The uncertainty of him now getting back into the national team for me is what I'm looking at, right? Which I think is a weakness. Now he's going to have to go in and be really, really confident, and we'll see what this camp looks like. I put in that the projections we did earlier. I'd like to see him get a game. Yeah. I'd like to see him get 45 minutes because he's earned it at the moment.
All right, and speaking of another guy that maybe has earned it because of his experience, or maybe not because he's not playing, is Ethan Horvath.
Yeah, look, he's had a tough go at the club level this season, has been benched since. We've seen great moments. I think we showed the clip of the Mexico when Zack Steffen got hurt in that final. He came in, that big penalty kick save. He played well in that game. He made one other save in that game as well that was really, really important.
2021.
But he's had some moments. I mean, he's had some moments that are just howlers. Decent shot stopper, big, long, lanky, can get wide and do it fairly quickly for a big guy, can get down fairly quickly. But lack of sharpness, again, I go back to this. I just don't know how you can be, if you, as an analyst, when you take a month, Sue's just said before, she took a couple days off and she came back and she felt rusty.
Facts.
Right? Well, how do you look at this and think that someone who's not playing is not going to be rusty? And I can't get it out of my head. Maybe it's my mental block right now.
Right.
But when you don't play, I just don't know how you can be your sharpest.
All right, Tom, to top off the segment, a word of advice for USMNT goalkeepers, because with all due respect to these guys and from the pool that we have, they deserve to be on the national team, right? But I see a large breach in these guys and you guys. I am talking about who I mentioned before. You, Tim Howard, Casey Keller. I would even put Brad Guzan is arguably in that table. And Brad, who's my neighbor, Brad, of course. How can I?
Neighbor.
How can I forget you, Brad? Those are the guys. What do they need to do to be able to sit at the table with you guys?
Mission number one, get on the field. You got to get on the field and you have to play. That is the number one thing. That, for me, is the only way that you can get better. And look, I can tell you from experience, one guy that's got experience of being the goalkeeper that plays in their home country, right? It changes your life, right? And you need to be fighting for that day in and day out. And I know they are. And I know they're battling and training and fighting and trying to get to the top. One guy's going to be able to do it, and he'll be a lucky guy at the end of the day. But with regards to just their professional careers and getting better, you got to get in a position where you're playing all the time, wherever that is.